My name is Jeffrey and host of the podcast. And today I am very pleased to welcome Hitesh Juneja, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of Beyond Oil, dialing in from somewhere north of Dallas to talk today about developments in the oil industry at the intersection of oil and technology. Hitesh, welcome to Digital Oil and Gas.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
I always ask everyone who comes on the podcast, if they don't mind, share a little bit about their background, how on earth they got into the role that they're in. Why don't you just relay a little bit about your personal story and how you got into the oil industry in addition, the technology sector?
Sure. I actually have a background in biotechnology and genetics, particularly both on the medical side and in the energy space.
So there's a natural connection from biotech to oil. So okay.
Yeah, it actually surprisingly is, because I actually worked on developing microbial fuel cells when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah.
And on that basis is how I actually came to the US. I was given some scholarships because of that. And then I took a little bit of detour through the world of technology. We developed a very significant e-commerce software and education platform. So it kind of helped me understand how to scale businesses and how to scale ideas. And then we went back right into the energy space and the medical space. And the oil industry is a very, very good place to combine technology and some on-the-ground field developments together. And that's what we are here to talk about. Actually, the way you describe it, the world of oil and gas digital is exactly what we are trying to tackle.
So why did you get to that conclusion that somehow the oil industry was the most promising? Frankly, if you're in Texas, right? Yeah, agriculture. Yes. There's another promising field for innovation on the ground. And so why oil and gas? Why that?
Very much so. So first of all, we're not ignoring agriculture. We are actually working on an indoor farming system as well on the side. That's one of the things. However, it's because the size of the oil and gas space, as it accounts for majority of the energy usage.
Yeah, that's true.
And there is a very significant disconnect in the world right now, because you have all these people who are all about sustainability and moving to a future beyond oil. But nobody seems to be focused on charting it out in a very practical manner. Everybody is trying to, I guess, propagandize everybody else into giving up comfort or convenience or profits for the sake of being green. And we found that was a very significant challenge that can be tackled fairly easily from our perspective with technology. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I've always maintained, when as a consumer, if I'm in the grocery store and I want to buy a quote green product, I'm going to pay more. A lot more. And if I want to buy green energy, I'm going to get a surcharge. If I want my airline to use a green fuel, there'll be an extra tax. I don't get it. I mean, if we want the world to embrace new technologies, they can't be more expensive. Like, what logic is that? I mean, that might be an Elon Musk and I'll charge people extra for electric cars, but this is stuff that we grow our food with and light our homes with. Like, this is not something you turn around and say, you're gonna pay a lot more for that. So I totally agree. The whole logic of green is not nonsensical, but the pathway to get there, which is paved with gold for the green producers, it's just nonsense. No, why would anybody buy that? Yeah, totally get it. So you set your life's ambition now is to go and solve this problem. Is that how?
That is correct. Actually, let me rephrase that. We are solving the problem. We are actively making some very good headway, which is why we now feel it's a good time to talk about it, because we have done the prototyping, we have done the testing, we have done our pilot studies, and now it's time to actually expand and grow.
Grow it up, yeah, exactly. What specific area did you decide to focus on? Because oil and gas, it's a huge area. There's so much opportunity to green it.
Absolutely. The area we decided to focus on is what we call ROW, R-O-W, which is recycling old wells.
Oh, yes.
So the idea is actually very straightforward. You have almost 1 million, or maybe more than 1 million at this point. It's tough to tell. Oil wells that are past their decline curves in North America. These are the wells that most often get ignored because they are not very profitable to work with. They produce less than 3 or 4 barrels of oil per day.
Yeah.
These are also the oil wells that are most in danger of being abandoned and turn into an eco-hazard. They are the ones that are going to spill oil and chemicals into the soil and into the water table. And I read a report which said that Texas alone is estimating around $117 billion in cleanup costs.
Whoa.
Just for these wells.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a hot potato too, like the way the industry works is that everybody tries to keep the well going as long as possible. Then when it's no longer economic in their model, you try and sell it to the next guy. And maybe he or she can turn it into something economic. But eventually that strategy runs into there's no more solutions out there, so you have to abandon. It sounds like you took aim at that very, very tail end and said, how can I keep these wells going a little bit longer? Is that fair to kind of frame it? Yeah. Okay.
Well, two points behind it. So one, how can we keep these wells going a little bit longer?
Yeah.
And the way we accomplish that is by significantly lowering the lifting costs and making the entire process more granular, technologically driven, more effective. But secondly, it's also a question of currently how a lot of the system is managed, right? Everything is done on a field basis. So you might have a field with 300 wells in it, only 100 of them are producing. The other 200 are effectively abandoned, where they're underutilized. There are pump jacks on them that are turned off.
Yep.
And our point is, if we can turn those back on, if we can replace the equipment on there and we can replace the technology on it and make that effective, now we don't need to necessarily drill for a lot more oil because we can start recycling the old stuff.
But those, as I think about those old wells, their designs are all over the map because there's no standard way to do a well. So there's a huge diversity in those wells. If they've been shut in for a while, they may require some restart cash or capital. If they are beyond the reach of the grid, is another example. There's no power to them. There's no telecommunications access in many cases. So all of this modern technology, it's very hard to visualize how that actually will help these wells. Those are all legitimate issues? Are you seeing those as part of the challenge to be solved?
Those are exactly the issues why this makes it so attractive to our team, right? Because our team wants to tackle stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you actually kind of touched upon two issues here. One is the management, on the field management, how do we make it work?
Yep.
And the second is the financial capital behind it. What is the capital structure and how do you move money into these kind of industries and into these kind of wealth structures?
Yeah.
We are tackling both of them.
Yeah, they are two very different issues. Right now, capital markets are largely shut off to investments, especially in the far end of the wells curve here, the stripper wells or the very, very low productivity wells. There's very little capital available for those. So even if you wanted to do the retrofit, you probably will struggle to find conventional capital. So unless you solve that problem too, then retrofitting is going to be a fraught endeavor at the best of times. So you stood up a team and said, let's go take aim at this. There's a million of these things out there. And if we could resuscitate these wells, we can forestall the environmental disaster. We can avoid having to drill more wells because you continue to keep production going. Sounds very appealing. How do you do it is probably the question.
It is. So, and you're correct. So we had to take aim at both the issues simultaneously. We had to come up with a capital structure that works, that can move money into this, and at the same time, a team that can physically make this happen.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Let's talk about the physical on the field stuff first, because that's pretty easy to understand. Fundamentally, the biggest source of improvement is on shallow wells. So on the shallow wells, which are less than 2,000 feet deep, on those wells, we look at replacing the pump jacks with solar-powered pneumatic pumps, hence the name Solar Oil Project, because then that way we can work with wells that are away from the grid, that don't necessarily have their own electricity, that need some kind of a support. And these are pump structures that have no moving parts above the ground, so you don't have the maintenance issues. They are corrosion resistant, acid resistant. It helps tremendously in terms of working on wells that traditional pump jacks get corroded easily, and you might have other issues.
Oh yeah.
So that's the fundamental technological innovation. on the field basis that we are focused on at the moment. Now, there are a few other things. There's remote monitoring built in, which gives us a real-time update on what's happening at the well. We make sure that the pumps only trigger. We have downhole sensors, so the pumps only trigger when there's enough fluid to lift, things like that. That reduces our cost of production dramatically. So our lifting cost comes down. Because these are old wells, our amortization cost is much lower as well, because these are significantly lower in terms of what it costs to acquire. But usually we are able to just work with an operator. So we go to an operator and we say, you have 100 of these on your site. They're worthless to you. In fact, they're a future liability. Let us work on them. We will cover the cost of equipment and get them going. But then we just want you to share the production with us. So it's a win-win all around. The operator loves it. We like it. And that's going to play into how we work the finance structure as well.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit more. So if I visualize this this facility, if you like, on what would have been an old beam pump well, I'm going to see a solar panel. I'm going to see a different infrastructure at the pump's not going to be there. The physical heavy infrastructure to service that asset's not going to be there. Where is the pneumatic pump? Downhole somewhere lifting? Is that where that's located?
So the pneumatic pump in particular is actually a multi-stage pump. So you have a small subsection of it that's on the top, that's the wellhead. And then everything else is multiple stages. So there's multiple pumps going down depending on how deep we are going. So we are going roughly 200 to 300 feet per stage. So if you're doing 1,000-foot well, we're going to have 4 to 5 stages.
So back to your point earlier, it's set up such that you need the fluid before it knows to switch on to lift something, right? It's not running dry, right? It's not lifting if there's nothing to lift. So wait till there's enough fluid. And so are you lifting the fluid up through these different stages?
Yes, correct. It's like an elevator.
Yeah, cool. That's a very interesting idea. And how much computer horsepower do you have to situate at the well to be able to do all of this off-grid, say, in an unsupervised way? That's
the other wonderful thing about this. Since it's pneumatic, it doesn't consume electricity in real sense, because all you need to do is maintain 175 psi pressure. So what we do is we set up an air compressor at a central location, and then we can run 7 to 10 well sites off of that compressor, which will now keep all of them powered up. So the other benefit of that is that you can, in many cases, rely entirely on solar, because once the air has been compressed and it's stored in little, we call them tank batteries in a sense. They're batteries for us, but they're full of air. They're not electric batteries. Once these batteries are full of air, they'll run for a while, and we can just, the air compressor only needs to run every now and then. So again, it can be managed off of solar. Although so far in almost every case, we have had grid available as a backup. So we have always used the grid as a backup if needed. But the way the math works out, we could run it entirely off of solar. Yeah,
there's this is a really interesting use case. There are some a couple of models I've read about. I haven't seen these in production. Someone out there might know about them, but you take an abandoned pipeline, which obviously had been built to carry gas or liquid, but it's a natural compression asset when you think about it. You can actually pump air into it, turn it into a little battery. It's storing, as you point out, compressed air, and it's when the air spins out of your vessel. That's where say it spins a turbine or does something to get you some reverse energy. But you're pouring it into the thing and compressing air in there. So that's a very fascinating use case.
Exactly.
Clever.
So we work with the manufacturers and the providers for these different technologies, right? The pneumatic pumps, the compression, the remote monitoring, all the stuff. So we basically have built a network with all these manufacturers. In many cases, they're our partners. They are equity partners with us in the company. So everybody has a reason to see this succeed.
Yeah, no kidding.
Instead of becoming competition against each other, right?
Yeah.
So then we go to the operator, and like I said, we tell the operator, your wells seem like a very good fit for what we want to accomplish. We will cover the cost of equipment, cover the cost of installation, get this well into a producing well, into an asset instead of a liability, and then we will take a portion of the production. Now, again, each deal is different, right? It depends on if we are acquiring the well site entirely or if we are just doing a kind of a JV and a production agreement with them. But now, what we have fundamentally is oil production coming in where there wasn't any in the past.
Yeah.
And it is at a much lower cost, in some cases 40 to 50% lower cost. It is at a much lower carbon intensity. We're looking at reduction of up to 92% in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very attractive in the sense of a financial portfolio as well.
Yeah, there's a lower maintenance cost dimension to this too, because there isn't as much mechanical apparatus. I'm sensing, yeah. So the operator, you don't have the same operator circuit that you would typically see. You know, someone visiting the facility every day to and check it out. A lower site visitation cost, less potential for leaks too, I suspect.
Yep, much less. You almost have no leaks at all. In fact, in many of our prototype sites that we installed in 2017, there's been no leakage there either. Much cleaner. It's very aesthetically pleasing when you look at it.
Yep.
And you don't have, massive amount of steel, and you don't have these big pump jacks.
Yep.
So from a safety perspective, it's much better, because when you do have workers on the site, they're not having to work with heavy equipment. Yep. So there are just a lot of benefits. So when you add all of that up is how you end up with very, very significant cost savings. It makes it much more profitable. And now you can genuinely make these oil wells productive when earlier you couldn't even imagine it.
Yeah. And I imagine during the 2020 oil price downturn, price went negative, as you probably remember. What is it, April or May sometime?
Yep, April.
April. A lot of companies in oil and gas would have been summoned very quickly, called the finance team and said, okay, we don't know if this is going to be a sustained problem. Let's start valuing these assets and figure out which ones we can shut in, which ones we need to abandon. So I think a lot of companies have probably built a portfolio of these assets now on their books, where they're staring at them thinking, okay, there's a unfunded abandonment liability lurking out there. Oil price curve still isn't favorable to further investment. And these things are just sitting there as latent assets. Is there some way to economically revive them? There has to be as you say, there's a million wells out there. There'll have to be a lot available to prosecute. Let's turn to the finance side, because that's the kind of the other puzzle here, right? There's no money to do this. So how are you inventing money out of thin air to go after this?
So that's a good thing. We're not doing it out of thin air. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't have the power of the Fed, but it's probably for the better. But the way we are doing it is we've actually built on solaroil.io. We've actually built a platform, which is a blockchain-driven platform, which is interesting. You mentioned you're on a blockchain board as well.
I am, yeah. I'm on the board of a blockchain startup in out of Europe.
Excellent. So what we did is essentially said, all this oil that we're going to be producing, we're going to tokenize that oil, and we will share that in a commodity exchange with anybody who wants to come in and participate on this project. So we basically issue a token called the Solar Oil Access Token. It's a pure utility token, not speculative at all. It has a fixed price. So anybody can go to the website, create a free account. They can purchase these access tokens, and they can assign them to these different well portfolios that we're working on. That's what generates the capital. Now, when these well portfolios produce the oil, we turn around and share that production with the users who have the access tokens. We share it with them in proportion to how many access tokens they have. So if you have, X number of tokens and I have 2X, meaning I have double the number of tokens you do, then when a barrel of oil is produced, I'll get, 2/3 of it and you'll get 1/3 of it. Right? It's very, very straightforward. And the way we do that is we visualize it in the form of a second token we call the SOPX, which is Solar Oil Production Token. So this is straight up just a representation of a barrel of oil that is being produced. You have access to that. And this is where I mentioned we had to kind of innovate and build a whole other infrastructure for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
We literally built a commodity exchange where you can now trade that oil that is being produced against other commodities, other assets like gold, silver, palladium, or into other cryptocurrencies or fiat currencies. So we actually built the financial ecosystem to make this happen. in addition to the technical ecosystem to make it happen on the field.
So I could put myself into the shoes of someone listening to this. I might not want to be a speculator or trade my petroleum representative tokens for other commodities. I might want cash. How do I? Because I got to pay bills, right? So how do I monetize that position? And is that done through the exchange
Absolutely,
or through
the way
other
you just
exchanges?
described it. So let's say you receive a barrel of oil, you receive one SOPX.
Yep.
Inside the platform on the commodity exchange, it shows you what the USD value of that one barrel of oil is at the moment of one SOPX.
Yep.
And you can immediately essentially trade that for that fiat value and receive that into your account.
Receive that value. And so the barrel of oil, as you know, it doesn't. It's not like a bar of gold. It sits on a bank shelf somewhere, and you hold it. You consume it. You have to turn it into something. So at some point, the underlying token itself has to be consumed or destroyed or taken out of circulation because the barrel is no longer
every
there.
Time, that's exactly what we do. So this is why the blockchain piece is so attractive for this.
Yeah.
So we are doing this off of the Ethereum platform. So what we are getting to do is every time that SOPX is traded by you, when you redeem it, quote unquote, we simultaneously burn that associated token, which means it leaves existence.
Gone out of
So it's very much like the crude oil barrel of oil goes to the refinery. It is now out of existence and has been turned into all these other things. The same way when you do that with your SOPX token, it goes out of existence and it's burned.
So that means if you like, the value of the token itself may be in fact tied to the value of the underlying commodity. In that the token,
correct.
The token just represents
the SOPX token. Is entirely driven by the WTI price of oil. So
precisely, exactly right.
Yeah, so we don't set that price. That's the other good thing about this, right? So when it comes to transparency and protection, you don't want people manipulating token prices and so on, which is a big issue that I have with the blockchain space at the moment. We cannot do that. We don't do that, but also we fundamentally cannot do it because we don't control the price of oil.
So now there will be there's a physical world of that's running in parallel to here. The oil gets produced, puts into a tank or a battery of some kind at the site. Someone goes and collects it and takes it to a distribution center or a collection point, say a pipeline system, or maybe it's another storage asset, or in some cases may go directly to a refinery. So that's really unusual. There's a bunch of ways to move the oil into market. How do you tie the existence of the token to the movement of the product, the physical product, so that you don't get that disconnect happening? You know what I mean?
So
like you got to burn the token when you burn the oil. So how do you tie them together? How's that done physically?
Exactly. So from our perspective, this is a production token, which, by the way, is also the unique part of it. Right? There is no token at the moment that is based on production of a commodity. Anything in the blockchain space usually says, well, we are backed by reserves. Which you and I both know doesn't really mean anything.
I like the idea. You're tied to a specific barrel. Like that's a very different animal than I'm asset backed, and I don't really know what the asset is. This is a barrel. This is unit per unit.
Yep. So when we receive the report, we receive reports from the operators or from the sites saying, today X number of barrels of oil has been produced. We immediately show that to our platform users. So you will see a daily chart that shows today there was this many estimated barrels of oil that has been produced for you. Now that production is noted at that time. And just like you mentioned, because there are so many different mechanisms on how that oil might be distributed in the background, we don't burden the user with that, right? As far as the user is concerned, a barrel of oil was pulled out of the ground. It is now available here. The operator has told us that. So now you have one SOPX.
Perfect.
And that's fundamentally it. It's very straightforward.
So if I own on a taxation basis, has taxation come into this yet? Because now I own a barrel of oil. It's represented by a token. It's my share. It's an asset. How is that is there a taxation treatment here? Because
yes, there is a taxation treatment.
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, the underlying commodity will rise in price, representing a capital gain to the asset holder. In different countries will have different rules, but somebody somewhere will be saying, "Hey, I want my share of that tax authority."
This is the other benefit of using the tokenization side and the blockchain side.
Yeah.
So when you say I want to redeem my X number of barrels for, let's say, $1,000.
Yep.
You will receive $1,000 equivalent of Ethereum or USDT or different options. And then it's your choice when you decide to convert that from the cryptocurrency or the token. Yep. When you decide to convert it from that into the fiat and pull it into your bank account. At that time, when you do so, that's when taxation to you becomes
manifest.
A concern.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And because we have people all over the world, right? We have people from Vietnam and we have people from different places in South America and Africa and US. There's no way for us to manage the taxation systems for all the world.
Yeah.
So we simply leave that to the user. They decide when they want to convert it to fiat, when they want to pull it to their banking system, and then they report to their governments based on their local laws.
The platform here could be used beyond liquids, I suspect.
Yes, it could. In fact, we're working on a natural gas equivalent token at the moment, which is a natural step forward from oil.
Yep.
We are also looking at a couple of other things. Right now, we are investigating looking at basically feasibility studies for gold. But oil is a very easy fix from our perspective just because of our background. It's kind of, like I said, this is kind of the linchpin that I feel like if we can solve this problem, if we can recycle these old oil wells, you suddenly lower cost, you move forward in the green direction, you lower your carbon footprint, all those things happen, but you're not inconveniencing the society as a whole. In fact, you're making energy cheaper as you're going along.
Yeah.
So we feel like that's the primary aim to tackle. That's our phase 1 goal. Our phase 2 goal was the finance aspect. It just so happened that we had to end up dealing with both of them together. So we are actually at the verge of completing phase 2 now. And phase 3 is expand to other commodities and then into futuristic, if you will, energy sources. Again, microbial fuel cells, hydrogen systems, things like that. But those are down the road and we'll see how to incorporate that into the platform. But as of right now, we have a very clear mandate on what we're doing.
Yeah, I can see lots of potential though. You think about algae as just another fuel source generates. Yeah, exactly. And imagine an algae farm generating a biofuel. The per barrel gets captured as a production token. Now you have a representation of that asset. The physical world can trundle along and do what it needs to do, but the financier and the owner of that contributive capital can have their share of it and not have to go through the very traditional settlement of all this, as you know, royalties and all the calculations. It's
exactly.
That's goofy.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Our whole thing is, if we can simplify the production process and then we can simplify the underlying finance market, so it's much easier for people to participate, much easier for them to receive any potential returns and so on. Again, it's just a question of simplifying these age-old things, right? This is just one of those industries where people just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
So for us, it was an easy one to look at and say, okay, I can see very clear inefficiencies that we can improve upon. It's very much like what happened in the e-commerce space, right? You look at e-commerce, a lot of it just seems like common sense. Yeah, of course people should be able to order stuff online, right? But just doing that one little thing has caused such a reduction in consumer goods costs.
Yeah.
And that's how we see this as well.
Yeah, the parallels are strong. Same thing with movies and streaming. They started out with I'll listen to my music online. Then it went to movies online. Now you can stream geologic data if you want. Like you don't have to any large complex data set effectively can be subjected to a streaming business model design.
And if you think about it, that's what our remote monitoring systems are as well, right?
Yeah, how do they work?
We are literally streaming the data from the well, so we don't have workers going out to each site and looking at it.
Yeah, and you don't have the data collection problem that goes along with all of that stuff. This has been fascinating, actually. I'm really very glad you came on this call to this podcast recording today to talk about this, because I'm very curious to see how the combination of blockchain innovation unlocking, in this case, finance, but it's ownership, right? It's the identification of the barrel and the identification of the owner of the barrel through blockchain unlocks a whole financial model that enables this business model to actually work. And that's, as you point out, doing the two sides is critical. It won't work if you just have the one side, because there's no money to put into the pneumatics to go after it. And why would the current capital markets invest in a new commodity exchange dealing with a tokenized asset structure? Like, why would they? Especially for an asset of a stripper well, like they never would. So unless you actually tackle the two things together, this doesn't come to life.
I think the hidden genius of this model actually might be the fact that we have disconnected the value here onto a per barrel basis. We have disconnected it from the underlying asset, right, which is the oil well.
Yeah.
When you do that, it suddenly opens up these capital markets in a way that you cannot otherwise, because you have to account for the cost of ownership, future liability, all of these things that now we have eliminated from the equation. Yeah. And again, like you said, we realized pretty quickly it has to be both these sides together. It couldn't be one at a time. Yeah. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of work that has panned out, and now it's time to grow. Time to
grow, scale it up. Where, if people want to learn more about this, where do they go visit? What's your website?
They should go to solaroil.io. There's all the information on there. We have videos showing the pumps in action, the patents, all the stuff that they could want to learn about it.
Brilliant.
But most importantly, they can create a free account. They can purchase access tokens if they want to be a part of this, and they can start receiving oil production pretty quickly.
Not physically, but the tokens.
Yeah, not physically, but in the form of a tokenized version of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine FedEx knocking at the door. Here's your barrel of oil. I didn't buy a barrel of oil, did I? Yes, you did. Nope, here's your token. Much easier. Hitesh, thank you very much for coming on Digital Oil and Gas today. It's been fantastic talking to you.
No, absolutely. Likewise. Thank you for having me, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.